The skilled archer Clint Barton will be the focus of today's review as we have a look at the Diamond Select Toys Marvel Select Hawkeye. Possessing natural archery abilities honed to an expert level, Clint adopted the persona Hawkeye. When witnessing Iron Man save the lives of people at a carnival, he decided to become a costume crime fighter himself. As a way of proving himself, he broke into the Avengers mansion and convinced their butler Jarvis to play the role of a victim so he could display his powers. Iron Man vouched for Hawkeye and he joined the new lineup that included Captain America, the Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. Let's figure out how tall Hawkeye is by putting the tape measure next to the figure. And it would be safe to say that the figure is roughly about 7 1/4 to a 7.5 inch height. He comes with a bow. He comes with some arrows. But before we do that, he also comes with a diorama display base. And let's have a look at that now. The base depicts what I could imagine to be one of the drones of Ultron. Perhaps not specifically Ultron himself, and it is comprised of 3 pieces when you get out of packaging. I'll take those apart now just so you can see them. You get main part, you get wall part A, wall part B. I don't think they actually have letters on them, that's just what we're calling them. And then they just attach into place. Now they are unique to one another. This one has the L shape, or kind of like a hockey stick. Fits into only this groove here. It doesn't fit securely. In other words, if you just pull it out, it comes out rather easy. But it does stay in place, I suppose. And then the other one is more just a longer strip of plastic, and that fits into the equally long, narrowed cavern here. And then that just plugs into place like so. Again, neither of which really stay in place all that well. But at the very least, not that you'd be doing the blizzard test to it. They seem to stay in place. The display bases are always just as good as the figures themselves. I mean, the entry point into why you would want to pick up a Marvel Select figure sometimes isn't just so much the figure, but the base itself, and this one is no exception. The debris in which whatever Ultron this is laying across is very impressive. All the boulder and different parts of bricks and stuff that have fallen down. Even the back areas of the wall are exquisitely detailed. You can even see like there's little broken off pipes. You've got the actual steel rods that are coming out when you make brick, when you make walls. Those are all kind of sticking out there as well. Paintwork is very immaculate. Even like Ultron, very nicely detailed. No, he isn't removable. There is a peg point, one right there, and I thought there was another one, but there isn't another one. It's just one peg point right there. I have to say that it's rather difficult to get Hawkeye's foot in place because it really only gives you this much space to work with. You'll see it almost just is enough to clear his foot and nothing more. And unfortunately, like there again, there's really not a lot of space to work with there. But at the very least, it's a very impressive looking base. There's the back, not so much, a lot of hollow things happening. Equally said for the underside there, but nonetheless, a really nice looking base. Move that aside. And like I said, there was a whole bunch of different weapons that come included with Hawkeye. He comes, of course, with a bow. If he was going to be an archer and not include a bow, I would cry foul, but no crying foul here. He does come with the bow. Now, the bow does have a slightly softer plastic. Don't entertain the idea, if you will, though, guys, to be doing this too much, because it is, you know, there's a little bit of give, but it will break if you do that too much. You don't want to pull it back too far. It's not, after all, a real string. The bow fits in his hand, though just fits in his hand. It holds on by a very thin thread. Even thinner, perhaps, than the bow itself, as you can see. It falls out frequently. I wish that the hands were a little bit more closed, as again, it just sits really loose. I wish it wasn't the case, but sadly I had to be the bearer of bad news. It does sit extremely loose. I probably will end up displaying him with the bow slightly to the side. You can kind of give it a little bit of a tilt Sometimes it locks in place, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the times, though, it doesn't. So you're going to be playing the game of try to get him to hold the bow. I don't really like that game. I seem to lose at that game a lot. But he does come with that. He does come also with the Quiver, in which I've already put into his back here. I have to admit, though, I have to come clean about something. I had to glue it. Not this one, but you'll see that it twists rather awkwardly. It pegs like this as opposed to it flipping the other way around. I can't guarantee if that's everyone's or if just so happens to be mine, but you'll notice that it does just abruptly stop and then twist and then peg into place. This was not the one I glued, by the way. It was the one down here. I don't know if this was throwing it off, but needless to say, try as I might, that peg would not stay into place. So I coughed up some glue. I didn't literally cough up some glue. I coughed up some money, picked up some glue, and I glued that in place. Now it's not going anywhere. I can still get technically the sheath off. The Quiver, excuse me, gotta get the terminology down right. I could get technically the Quiver off. It would just matter of prying it over his head and just running it down his arm. I'd be able to get that off a-okay. There is a hole, a considerable hole in the top there. It looks like the Doomsday Machine from Star Trek Classic, the classic Star Trek series. But obviously from the side it does not. But there is that hole. That hole, in theory, could accommodate some rather interesting arrows. These ones here so happens not to have points on the end, so you could theoretically drop them in there. But I just want to say, though, the arrows are not nearly long enough. They do store them, yes, but if you can't see them technically, it almost doesn't even warrant having them. If they were just a little longer, almost in the intent that it would look like he's about to draw the arrow, that would be fine. I suppose you could have him reaching back and looking as if he's pulling the arrows out, but then why not have points in them? It seems to make no sense whatsoever. He does get two of them, though, and they look to be mirror copies to one another as well, right down to the feather ends there. So he gets two of those. He also gets a regular conventional arrow. Nothing overly exciting about these. No trick gimmick arrows on this particular one. It's just a straight out point. Point is rather nicely detailed. It's painted in a darker gray. And you've got the purple, once again, in the feathers on the end there as well. These are a little softer, about the same, give or take the same thickness as the bow that also came included with them as well. If you want to get a little bit more cooler in the way of arrows, ignore for the fact that it's slightly bent on the side. I'm developing a bit of a stress mark. Not me, but the arrow is developing a bit of a stress mark. It actually came out of the packaging like that, which is a bit disappointing. But if you look on the end of the arrow, you've got yourself a little small wasp. Wasp, I have to admit, though the body is good, the face is undefined, is the best way to describe it. For eyes, they've relegated to only giving her some dots. For her mouth, they've relegated to giving her a single dot. But from the distance, and that's really where this design is key. You're really never going to be looking at the figure this close. She's not really intended to be the star of this release. So the fact that she is very mildly sculpted in the face, I don't feel as if that's a letdown. I'm just more thrilled for the fact that she comes included atop of an arrow. The arrows can be placed in between his fingers. They are designed such to be that way. You can kind of take the arrow and fit it in between his fingers. And then the feather end of it, there we go. The feather end of it you can see fits between his thumb and I suppose his, that'd be his index finger and his pinky finger. It fits in between like that. Now twisting the hand as well, you can get the benefit of having the arrow lined up properly to the bow. And it's somewhat successful, if not for the fact that the hand is disappointing on this end because it doesn't hold the bow properly in place. It just, again, sits loosey-goosey. It's all over the place. So again, I managed to get it at the beginning of this review. You know what they almost even should have done is they should have put like a little peg right there. I know that's a very, That treads lightly on something we shouldn't even discuss, but a very small little peg right there and a hole right here, so that at the very least, you know, if you wanted to have him displayed with the bow, it could simply just peg right into the side of the hand, and then it wouldn't go anywhere. If not for that, you're unfortunately just, again, it's just a balancing act to get that the bow properly in place. Spent so much time talking about all his accessories, we didn't really spend any time talking about Hawkeye here. Of course, sporting a classic look. I particularly like this design of Hawkeye, very heavily influenced by almost like design elements of like old classic Wolverine with the same sort of ears. Big giant H though in the middle though to tell you that's Hawkeye. The coloring is nice. It's a breath of fresh air because between the Ultimates and of course the movie Avengers, Hawkeye never looks like this. I could entertain the idea of him eventually looking like this for at the very least one movie, or a standalone Hawkeye movie, but I don't think this look would translate well, at least for Hawkeye. Wolverine, you could kind of dismiss it as, well, it is Wolverine after all. Hawkeye, I don't think would ever exhibit this particular look, although he kind of gets a skirt happening, but at the very least, you probably will never see this end up happening. The figure, though, like I said, is a breath of fresh air. I love the coloring between the blues, which is one of my all-time favorite blues, this kind of dark color. It actually is about the same sort of color. I know it's not quite, so anybody who is a stickler for coloring, don't say it. It's not that same color, but it's of a darker, lighter shade, I should say, to the darker background here. So as you can see, I really do love blue. Between the blue and what I can only describe as the peculiar purple pie man of Porcupine Pete, that's the type of purple that we're getting here. What did he just say? Says one of the younger viewers. Don't even ask. But you get that sort of purple. It's this darker kind of, I don't even know what color I would describe it. It's almost just like a Concord grape purple. It's glorious. It's delicious. I just want to eat it up. I will refrain, though, because it is, after all, plastic. You don't want to be putting this in your mouth. Scale work is really fantastically done here on the top portion of his torso. Again, everything blends very well. The continued carryover of the purple from the top of his very interesting-looking mask all the way down to here, and then that stripes off down all the way down to his skirt. Getting himself two rather classic and glorious Buccaneer-style boots with the colored cuff, like the cuff top portion to it there. Again, a lot of him comes together rather nicely. I do like his head sculpt as well. It's youthful, and yet it still carries... I do really like that it's a longer face as well. It differentiates itself from, say, other Marvel Select figures, and it definitely doesn't look like other Marvel Select releases. Definitely no carryovers of molds when it comes to the Diamond Select releases, which that unfortunately can't be said for the Marvel Legends releases. And I know, I don't want to bash Marvel Legends versus Marvel Select, but for any company to say, well, we have to make use of the same buck molds, essentially using the same molds, and then just kind of tooling them slightly, it's a way for us to save costs. Well, you compare that to what Diamond Select releases. There he is next to, say, for example, the recently looked at Colossus. Now, I ask you, these are roughly about the same release date, about the same time frame. There is nothing different. There couldn't be any more differences between the two. There's nothing shared from one mold to the other. Company A, we're just going to say Company A, wants to make use of same molds because they can get as much as they can more money for making use of the same molds. So Company A wants to make use of the same bucks, the same initial molds, and then just kind of slightly tweak them to save money. More bang for your buck is what I was looking to say. Company B, on the other hand, thinks, well, we want to make, obviously these figures are distinct from one another, and just shy of us doing collect and connect figures, which is also one thing that other companies are doing, we're just simply going to produce larger figures. Colossus by nature should be taller than Hawkeye here, so it makes all the more reason we're going to make a bigger figure. The price point on these also are identical to one another. They're roughly about $34 when it comes to the retail store shelves. I just so happen to find these at my local comic book store, which are now starting to restock a lot of their Marvel Select releases again, which is also good that Diamond Select does this from time to time. They re-release previously released figures. So a lot of times you may get a figure that's slightly older with packaging that may date it as, say, 2017, 2018, but essentially it's a re-release of the initial figure, which is good because it also keeps scalpers' prices down. So really, it's win-win across the board for all the collectors in mind. Again, for Hawkeye here, we're kind of getting off topic. We're talking about rants and buck molds and all that sort of stuff. Let's have a look at his posability now, shall we? His head rotates all the way around. A hinge up and down. Shoulders hinge outward very, very nicely. You can rotate them technically all the way around. The quiver stays completely out of the way. Swivel on the bicep. Single hinge on the elbow. Rotation on the hand. No, unfortunately, you will not get any hinging back and forth, but you will just get a swivel. You could do this until the cows come home, but it's not going to change anything. He has a straight swivel in the waist. That's all you're going to get. Split on the legs, forward and back. Top swivel cut on the thigh. You only get a single hinge on the knee. Nothing at the top of the boot, which I almost expected it to be the case. Not the case here. And the hinge back and forth happening on the feet. No ankle rocker there happening either. With more and more movie tie-in figures hitting store shelves and the move away from outfits like this, it's kind of a breath of fresh air to go back and have a look at classic Hawkeye wearing this outfit. I'm actually of more the side favoring this outfit than simply just a guy running around with a bow and arrow in hand. It's ridiculous, yes, it's a little over the top, sure, but I do always like the design elements of this particular costume, and I really like the combinations of the blues and this glorious grape purple that made up his quiver and the outfit that he's wearing as well. Yes, this is not something we would ever see him wearing in a future Avengers movie, but again, I dig the colors, I dig the design of him. And I really think Diamond Select did a bang-up job on him. He's a little older, yes, and because of that, he forfeits a little bit some of the posability that we get with future or current releases. But I think he still holds up well. The only thing, unfortunately, that doesn't hold well, literally, is the bow that sits in his hand. It sits really loose, and unfortunately, his hands aren't clamped properly to properly support that bow in hand. So a lot of times, you may find yourself balancing and trying your best to get the bow in hand. A lot of times you'll have it falling out of his hand, which is a bit of a shame. I like the inclusion of all the arrows, although the arrows with the tips missing, they fit too far into the quiver that a lot of times they just ultimately get lost. I'm glad at the very least we get one traditional arrow, and then we get one arrow that has Wasp on the end of it. So that gets a little extra mileage and definitely benefits for the, if you want to get a little more creative with the way you're displaying him. And speaking of displaying him, even though I don't have him in final looks with it, I really love the Ultron display base that came included with this figure as well. It goes to show when it comes to the Diamond Select, Marvel Select releases that not only are you getting great figures, but a lot of times you're just getting as good of a display base as the figures themselves. Hawkeye here has one of the better diorama display bases that have come with Marvel Select figures, but really if you look at the across the board of Marvel Select in general, a lot of them come with really cool diorama pieces. And again, that's a testament to the fact that Diamond Select continues to want to churn out figures, not necessarily relying on making use of the same molds, but giving collectors exactly what they want. And if a classic Hawkeye with a mask similar to Wolverine, if this is the type of outfit that you like, I would consider definitely adding this one to your collection. Today we were having a look at our slightly older figure, but we were having a look at the Diamond Select Toys Marvel Select Hawkeye. Very cool colors, very cool sculpt, very cool figure. If you guys want to go back and have a look at some of the older Marvel Select figure reviews that I've done, there's a Marvel Select playlist on this channel that you can go and watch at your viewing pleasure. Make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below. That's key so that when future videos come onto this channel, you'll never miss out. As for future videos, definitely there's going to be a lot coming your way, so stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.